My name is Azza El Siddique, and I am a sculpture and installation artist. I was born in Khartoum, Sudan, grew up in Canada, and I currently live and work in New Haven, Connecticut. Through multifaceted installations composed of architectural structures and materials, I use a kind of catch and release system to address mortality, science, mythology, and spirituality within systems of power. I'm interested in creating a discourse between the ancient and contemporary, exploring how rituals of the past continue to echo through modern practices and how they create bridges across time that interrogate shared human experiences. Central to my artistic inquiry is the study of ancient mortuary practices, particularly those of Egyptian and Nubian cultures, which offer profound insight into humanity's relationship to decay and the desire for perpetuality. This fascination informs not only the themes within my work, but also the material choices and methodologies themselves. My work also investigates the nexus between ancient wisdom and future technologies, how the past informs our understanding of the future. I think of this as a cyclical relationship between knowledge and innovation, where hidden histories and emerging futures continuously shape one another. My cultural identity is deeply tied to this investigation. I'm a product of the Bashir regime in Sudan. My parents had the foresight to leave Sudan while my father was completing his PhD in Canada, and they had already been involved in activism before immigrating. Although I have early childhood memories of Sudan, much of my relationship to Sudan has been formed through diasporic communities. That experience of existing between cultures is central to how I understand materials, history, and transformation in my practice.
My name is Salah Elmur. I'm a visual artist. I'm a Sudanese born in a small village near Khartoum called Jiref Gharb. My family lived there. They used to work as farmers and fishermen. It was a walking dream, like a beautiful dream. Really a beautiful dream. Life seemed to stand still in that moment. And the universe was about to reveal the secrets. I am just a painter. What I do, it is about discovery. Every day, there is a new lesson I learn. A puzzle I must solve. The painting should be even more beautiful than what I imagine, but that is really impossible. No one can imagine how much I like the old stuffs, everything that is old before I born. I really like the old things and the book and the paintings, and everything comes out of my imagination that is from my childhood and from my country and from my family. So, as I said, I'm just a painter. My memories from my childhood and my country my travels everywhere in the world. That is my inspiration to do my painting. Everything that I've seen every day in my life inspire me to do a new painting, to discover the world, to discover everything.
My name is Dina Nur Satti. I am a Sudanese Somali ceramic artist based in Brooklyn, New York. My father's family is from Nubia. My grandfather is from Dongola in northern Sudan. And my grandmother is originally from Daro, which is north of Aswan in southern Egypt. And I spent much of my childhood in Khartoum with my grandparents and extended family. And I would spend a lot of time visiting the Sudan National Museum. And I like to think that those trips very much inspired and informed my body of work, my latest body of work, both the forms as well as the color tones. And those choices are really inspired by the Kerma civilization and their pottery. I came into ceramics a little bit by coincidence. I was always artistic from a young age, but my areas of interest and studies were much more around post-colonial literature, cultural anthropology, African art history. I grew up predominantly in France and Kenya, and the influences around me were much more from kind of a cultural preservation standpoint. And I never thought that I would make a career out of anything artistic. I never went to art school. And so I really believe that perspective of curiosity and research and wanting to study much more about the cultural origins of objects is what influences my point of view with ceramics. And I'm especially interested in studying rituals, especially indigenous, folkloric, kind of pre-Abrahamic rituals. That's not to say that, especially in an area like Northeast Africa, we have such an amalgamation and a syncretic practice. The introduction of Christianity and then Islam hasn't taken away from some of the continued practice of our indigenous folkloric rituals and traditions. They've actually gotten folded into those Abrahamic practices. So they definitely live on. And so one of the things that I enjoy doing is looking for continuation and that continuity between ancient Nubia. And one of the ways that I look at that is through my study of plants. So a lot of the time when I go to Nubia, I'm looking at how there are certain stories around certain sacred plants, how they might also be similar in different parts of the Nile Valley. I'm also very interested in kind of zooming out of that region, since there's generally usually such a focus around Nubia and Egypt, and looking at how the migration patterns across the Sahara, through neighboring lands and cultures, as well as up the Nile, bring cultures from those areas into Nubia and Egypt. And finally, a big part of my research within the umbrella of animism is this idea of communication with the unseen world. I think a really important aspect of that is breaking down Western perceptions of what is possible, because of course the Western perception is much more about empirical, observational knowledge. And the other framework of looking at things is through intuitive knowledge, and knowledge that is sensed through means that are not, sight or smell or feel necessarily. And there is this whole kind of tradition all around the world of knowledge received through trance, knowledge received through embodied experience. Of course, there's also the intergenerational knowledge of what I like to think of as like a technology, because ritual work in those traditions is a technology. And it's a technology that deals with the seen world through objects and offerings and all those things. But a lot of it is through means that are unseen. And so a lot of my sense making in my world, like making sense of the world that I come from, is also this process of reclaiming what has also been sometimes lost because of colonization through culture as well as religion is this process of rediscovering the identity of what was before these colonizations happened. And so a very big part of my work beyond just the art is also kind of reclaiming those narratives and then also sharing them and learning about them and kind of reinforcing a movement of preservation as well. Especially with the start of the war in Sudan, I feel like there's a very big push right now within even the diaspora community, which, we are very different from, my family and my cousins who were born and raised in Sudan, but we have a different perspective that, gives us a different purpose in that process of preservation and kind of rediscovery of our own identity in that process.